Welcome to our channel, Beast Whisperer. Pale afternoon sunlight covers the vast grasslands of the Maasai Mara Reserve in Kenya. Veteran ranger David Kamau patrols the forest edge, checking for poaching. Amidst the whistling wind, he suddenly heard a faint groaning sound coming from the tangled bushes. David bent down, gently parted the branch, and his heart sank when he saw a skinny, exhausted lion cub. Its fur was matted with dirt, its ribs were visible, and its yellow eyes glittered with despair. He walked slowly, whispering reassurance, avoiding scaring the small creature before him. The lion tried to stand up, but his trembling legs made him fall flat on the dry ground. David bent down gently, slipped his hands under her belly, holding her close to his chest like a treasure. He carefully crossed the narrow path, avoiding dangerous thorn bushes and potholes. After a long, sweaty journey, David brought it back to the sanctuary's rescue station in the middle of the forest. At the station, David immediately found a thick blanket to wrap around the lion cub's cold body. He boiled some goat's milk, poured it into a small bottle, and patiently fed it sip by sip. Half-closed eyes suddenly opened slightly, weak gaze following every movement of the Saviour. The scratch on its shoulder was disinfected by him with a herbal solution safe for wild animals. David placed a small corner of the bed, adding a blanket so that it could sleep warmly. All night he kept checking its breathing, occasionally placing his hand on its chest to make sure its heart was still beating steadily. That night, David barely slept, for fear that his condition would suddenly worsen. The next morning, as dawn shone through the wooden window, the weak lion cub lifted its head to look at him. He smiled gently, placed a small piece of meat in front of her mouth. It bit lightly and swallowed it slowly. On the third day, her strength was better. She could stand unsteadily and take a few steps across the room. David began to let her out onto the porch, letting the morning sun dry her fur and warm her body. Every night, she curled up at David's feet as if seeking safety. He could feel every breath of her, reminding him of the bond that had just formed. A soft growl escaped as he scratched lightly under her chin, a rare sign of trust. From that moment, David knew that she considered him a part of her world. Once she was stable, David began training her to hunt simulated prey using a fabric bag with a quick draw strap. At first, she was clumsy, but gradually she learned to stalk, lunge at, and bite accurately at her fake prey. These sessions helped her muscles develop stronger and her hunting reflexes become more natural. Every time she did well, David rewarded her with a piece of fresh meat. They often went to the lake near the station, where she liked to wade in and chase small fish. The sound of lapping water and roaring mountains blended into the wild sounds of the Maasai Mara forest. One morning she roared for the first time, young but full of life. David felt pride as if watching a child grow up. In the afternoon, they often lay under the shade of acacia trees, the wind carrying the faint scent of wild grass. He stroked the young mane gently, seeing the signs of a future predator. She began to wander further and further into the safe zone on her own, but always returned to find him every night. David knew that the day of separation was closer than ever, but he still wanted to enjoy every moment with her, teaching her more survival skills. He believed that when she left him, she would be strong enough to live freely in the wild. And he also knew that a part of his heart would always belong to this creature. Sanctuary regulations require that all healthy rescue animals be returned to the wild. David got the message that it was time to release her into the vast grasslands. That morning, the sky was clear, but his heart was heavy. He opened the wooden door leading to the free area. The scent of the forest breeze rushed in. She walked slowly, turned her head to look at him. Her eyes seemed to want to ask something. David nodded slightly and said softly, "Go, I'm ready." She took a few steps forward, then suddenly ran back and hugged his leg one last time. He bent down, hugged the firm body, feeling the warm breath. Then she turned away, blending into the endless yellow of the wild grass. David stood still and watched until the figure was just a small dot. The wind blew, carrying a distant roar like a farewell. He knew that from that moment they belonged to two different worlds. After that day, David left Maasai Mara. taking up a position at a smaller reserve in northern Kenya. On moonlit nights, he still clearly remembered the golden eyes looking at him the day they parted. He wanted to come back many times, but work and circumstances did not allow it. Whenever he heard news about the lion population in the Maasai Mara, he looked for mention of her. News reports occasionally spoke of a mature lioness dominating a section of the savannah. David always wondered if that was his child from years ago. He kept the photo of him and her as a baby in a worn leather wallet. Missing is both warm and painful, like a thread connecting two souls. He didn't know if he would recognize her if he met her again, but his heart never stopped hoping. In his 5th year, David was invited back to the Maasai Mara to join a lion research project. He stood on the banks of the Talek River, listening to the birds calling to each other in the afternoon light. From a distance, a large lioness, her mane lightly fringed, was slowly approaching him. Her eyes locked on him, making his heart pound. He softly called out the name he had whispered 1,000 times, Nia. Immediately, the lioness rushed forward, crossing the water and creating white waves. She stood before him, eyes sparkling, sniffing the familiar scent. Then suddenly, she wrapped her legs around his shoulders and roared softly like when she was a cub. David hugged her back, feeling just like that year in the lifeguard station. The roar was not a warning, but the greeting of an old friend. Researchers standing nearby were stunned by this unbelievable moment. David pressed his forehead against hers, closing his eyes to feel her warm breath. He knew love is not erased by time or distance. Nia rubbed her head against his chest, then sat down next to him as if she didn't want to leave. They found each other again after half a decade apart. Witnesses were still shocked by the friendship that crossed animal boundaries. David smiled, stroking Nia's shiny mane, knowing they would miss each other forever. On the banks of the Talek River, man and lion sat side by side as if there had never been a day apart. Even though their worlds were different, their hearts remained connected, proof that compassion and trust can build a bond stronger than time. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the wild beauty of Africa, David knew their story would live on, not only in their hearts but in the hearts of everyone who believes in the power of kindness. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story and want to hear more incredible tales of humans and animals forming unforgettable bonds, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Beast Whisperer, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story from the wild.